Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining me today. This is a wonderful interview I'm so excited to share with you. And it's with Karen Ranzi, who created a book, an incredible book called Creating Healthy Children, that was so helpful for me during my pregnancy and now as I breastfeed this little one. So stick around for that interview. And if you're new to this channel, my name is Tumi. I'm a medical doctor, a dancer, a poet, and I love creating videos on holistic health and well-being. And if that's of interest to you, then consider subscribing down below. Enjoy the video, and I send you much love. Karen, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Toomey, for having me here with you. I'm so excited to speak with you.
Can you, Karen, just share a little bit about yourself, introduce yourself to the audience who's watching, if they don't know you, a little bit about what you do and what you create in the world?
So, it all started back in 1921 with my grandmother. My grandmother, my paternal grandmother, Celia, had asthma and emphysema in 1921. And she was so ill. She got worse with the medicines that they had at that time. And the doctors said that her emphysema was so bad, they didn't expect her to live more than another few months. And a little book called The Mucusless Diet Healing System came out just a few years before, in around 1918. Somebody brought her that book while she was in the hospital. And she read that book. And she said, I've got nothing to lose. She was a single mom, and my father was only 4 years old. And she read that little book, and she went to a whole plant diet. They didn't have the words vegan or raw back then. So she just went to a whole foods plant way of eating, and mostly fresh, raw foods. And she healed in about 10, 11 months from this life-threatening situation, and ended up going on to live another 50 years. Pretty high quality life. Meanwhile, I was raised with that background, knowing my grandmother's healing story, but my mother did not believe that we could get enough protein on plant foods. So she was scared to raise my sister and I on a diet that was based in plants, even though my father and my grandmother were living that way. It almost caused a divorce between my parents, but they kept going. My father loved his family, and he decided he was going to stay with us. But it wasn't an easy road, and there was a lot of conflict, and I grew up with all of this conflict in my house. And because I grew up in the 1950s and 60s, when processed food came to be, my mother served us, Wonder Bread. So I grew up on white flour, a lot of white flour products, and meat and dairy. I always remember being on maintenance antibiotics.
Wow.
And by the time that I was an adolescent, I had severe cystic acne all over my face and my back. Started going to dermatologists who told me, my father was telling me it was all about what I ate, and the dermatologist said it was all genetic. And so I wanted to believe that the dermatologists were right, because I didn't want to give up the animal food and the processed food that I was so addicted to. But after 25 years of taking drugs for my acne and getting hydrocortisone shots in my face, after 25 years of that, and also irritable bowel syndrome, I went to a vegan diet back in 1989, and just giving up the dairy, 3 months later, my skin no longer had cystic acne.
Amazing.
So that's my background. And that's what led me. Also, my mother listened to a medical doctor who told her that she would feel younger if she had a hysterectomy. And so she had a hysterectomy. and it triggered a heart attack, and she died quite young. And so I was only 21 at the time, and it was quite devastating. And that really started for me my quest for health. And I began looking for solutions, and really the solutions were in my own house because my father and my grandmother, they knew everything, and they're my inspirations. And so I went on to becoming a vegan. And interestingly enough, when my second child was born, he very soon after birth showed signs of severe asthma, chronic ear infections, and multiple allergies. I couldn't understand why, because I was already vegan. I had cleared my skin completely when I gave up the dairy. Why was my son so sick? My diet was mostly pastas and breads, and not much in the way of fruit or raw vegetables. It was, mostly processed vegan food. And so it took me time to realize that it was the raw living food that was really key. And I was starting to go to events and be around people who were highly motivating for me. My friend Dr. Douglas Graham is one of them, the author of the 80-10-10 diet. And I've known him for over 20 years. And there were other people as well back at that time. But, where I live in the New York, New Jersey area of the US, there really weren't very many people doing, teaching and living raw food in the early 1990s. But I knew I had to do something to help my son, and I needed to go to that next level. So it was beyond whole foods vegan. I had to go to raw living foods, and I started looking at those foods as the real food, because the molecular structure of the food is not changed. And so I went to a raw vegan lifestyle in 1994 and transitioned my two children, my daughter and my son, at the ages of 5 and 3. And my son, just like my grandmother, healed in under a year, in 10 to 11 months of going raw. I think it was like the cells, he had to expel the cells and the toxic debris that were in his system and go through a period of detoxification. And then his body just became so alive, clear eyes, beautiful clear skin, no more mucus pouring out of him. It was just quite amazing. And what was really interesting was that we could also go to people's homes who had kids who might be sick, and my kids wouldn't get sick. And I believe that it's because once you get healthy and you have an internal terrain that is clean, that the germ theory doesn't exist. And so this was a great learning experience for me. And that's what led me to write my book, Creating Healthy Children, which I have right here. So this is Creating Healthy Children Through Attachment Parenting and Raw Foods. It was a 7-year project, 7 years of interviewing people around the world, especially families, pregnant women, teenagers taking it upon themselves to go to a raw vegan lifestyle. So much is in this, my whole life is really in this book. And then I did a recipe book because my readers were asking for, okay, so there's some recipes in Creating Healthy Children, but we want it real simple and basic, and we want lots of colorful pictures. And so of course, I listened to my readers, and I did Raw Vegan Recipe Fun for Families. This is not my family. This is a yeah, this is a family who has come to my programs, and they look and speak this way of living. And my kids were already much older at this time. My kids were already adults, and they're also in this book. So I have my family in here as well. There's my family.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. And so that's basically my story in a nutshell, but that's how I got so passionate about this. And I continue because of the stories that I witness and the healing that I witness consistently in working with people worldwide.
Beautiful.
Okay, so everyone, just so you know, there's a little bit of a pause here because we are continuing this beautiful interview the next day. That's why there's a lovely change of clothing you might see. But we're going to keep on going with the next question for Karen. Karen, can you share a little bit, maybe a little bit about, you've been sharing beautifully about the book, Creating Healthy Children, and we'll be focusing on this interview. We could talk for many more interviews, and we might do more interviews together, hopefully. We'll focus this interview on infant nutrition and nourishing children, especially as really young babies, beautifully. And just before we dive into that, I just wanted to ask you, maybe bring us up to date from when you created Healthy Children to now, briefly about what's going on with you and where your work has taken you.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Toomey. That book just continued my passion in this work of raising the healthiest children so that we have a bright future for the next generations to come. And I just, after writing Creating Healthy Children, I started working with families worldwide because my book went into all different countries, and I've been working with parents with children with autism. My original background, for 47 years, I've been working, or over 40 years, not quite 47, but over 40 years, I've been a speech and language pathologist, working with children with learning disabilities and autism. And diet and lifestyle change is so key. I realized, so I've worked with many families. I also do feeding therapy, which is part of that. And I incorporate raw vegan nutrition. And when I do, that's when we start to see some really big gains.
Wow.
And I've worked with many families. And I also, through this, I have started online coaching programs. I have a 5-week group coaching program, which makes it, very inexpensive for people who, wouldn't necessarily be able to do a private, like a long string of private coaching, to join me in a small group where we delve into the raw food topics. And I've had people come with type 2 diabetes, with thyroid issues, with cancer, with heart problems, with all kinds of autoimmune and skin conditions, which skin conditions are also an autoimmune condition. I had cystic acne for 25 years, and it was definitely autoimmune, and it was totally related to diet and lifestyle. So my audience has spanned over 20 years, and I'm just super excited about that. I created a raw food coaching certification. It is for vegans who are aspiring to have a career teaching this and spreading this message. And so I was, for myself, looking for a course that was affordable and had a substantial amount of information that would help me to be able to go out there and provide excellent coaching. And so because I couldn't find something exactly what I was looking for, I created my own. And that course is my Feel Fabulous with Food
Mm,
raw vegan coaching certification.
amazing.
And so it's
Amazing.
not about taking people 100% right away.
Sure.
It's about taking people from where they are in the direction to where they need to go to be at their healthiest. And it is nutrition and all of the lifestyle factors that go along with it. And that's
Amazing.
at feelfabulous.com. And then my coaching, and I can be reached for my private and group coaching at superhealthychildren.com. There's
We will
also
leave.
an extensive.
We'll leave your links below, Karen, for everyone to
Okay.
take a look at for
Yeah.
sure. You're doing incredible work. You've been doing incredible work for decades, and I feel like we could spend hours talking about that. And I want people to go and really do the work and see what you're doing in those links. I want to talk a little bit in the time that we have about just tap into your knowledge. You know, I'm an internal medicine physician, so my focus has been, my specialty has been adults. And I love now learning through my little baby boy more about children. And I did some work in Africa, as many of my audience members know, with malnourished children, but I have this beautiful, healthy little boy, and knowing how to nourish him the best. And I found your book to be very helpful for me around that. So I want to talk to you today about that. And I know many people watching will be so affected in a beautiful way by your knowledge around this topic. Again, you've had decades of experience around this. So the first question I have for you around that is, what is, in your research and your vast experience, what are your thoughts about the best foods for infants?
The best foods for infants, there's really only one, and that is mother's milk. Human mother's milk. There's no other milk, I promise you, there is no other milk that can replace mother's milk. And I recommend a minimum of 2 years of breastfeeding. That mother's milk provides all the fat, the protein, all the vitamins, minerals, and so many phytonutrients that we probably do not even know of yet.
Yeah.
So we cannot think that we are so smart that we can get away with going with something as a substitute. Formula has never met the need of infants. You'll see that through time in the past that that babies had terrible seizures and died from formulas because there wasn't enough vitamin B6 that there is present in breast milk. So instead of recommending breast milk, what the pharmaceuticals and some medical doctors did was that they added B6. But then there were other things that were missing. So along the way, like then we found out that there wasn't enough DHA in formula. So babies were having difficulties with that, and we were seeing health issues and brain issues.
Yeah.
And so what did they do? They added it. But there are more components to breast milk that we still don't know, and we'll just keep on coming up with them. So, so the best thing for a woman to do is to prepare herself for breastfeeding her baby.
Beautiful.
That is the best thing that she can give, just like cow milk is meant for the calf to grow into a beautiful cow, and goat milk is meant for the kid. Human milk is meant for the human baby.
A gorgeous answer. And I'll just say, I mean, I think you couldn't answer it better. And my experience when I was in West Africa taking care of malnourished children, I felt like you'll appreciate this story, is whenever it was possible, we would try for the mom to breastfeed that baby. And we even had women whose, milk had dried up that would try to give hydration to, so the milk would come back. Or we had their aunties, the children's aunties, or even their grandmothers who'd lactated before, if the mother, for example, had died or was too sick to breastfeed. they'd lactated before in the past and they could lactate again. And that was the best thing we could do for that child. Because as you said, there's nothing better in terms of nutrition. Breast is best. And the science backs it up. In fact, it's gotten so far now that the very standard, well-known organization, the American Academy of Pediatrics, will even say in their books now that children should only be exclusively breastfed when possible till 6 months, exclusively. And as you said beautifully, like if we can do that more and more and more, even better.
Definitely. And there's been some research done showing that women who do breastfeed for that 2-year point, that they have a lower risk of breast cancer. Because that's what we're meant to do with our breasts. I mean, that it's meant for our children to get our milk, and that's a beautiful thing. It's worked into the whole nature's plan. And so people also who start feeding their babies or feel that they are pressurized to feed their babies, the little infants at 4 months old already, that is really way too early. I have seen that that infants need to already have teeth, and just because they're putting things in their mouth for exploration doesn't necessarily mean that they are ready to digest food.
So that's a great, that is a, sorry,
whole
that's
different thing.
I love that you said that, because that was actually my next question. Is there can be this, even my little one is doing this now, there's showing interest in what I'm eating, the beautiful, I mean, I'm not surprised. I had gorgeous apricots today for breakfast and watermelon, these beautiful, vibrant foods, and he's reaching out and wanting that, doesn't have the teeth yet. So it's a great segue to this question of, if you see that a baby is desiring or showing interest, does that mean they're ready for food? I know it's a loaded question, solid food. And if not, then how do you decide when to start introducing solid foods for a baby? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So, you know, most of the time, people are introducing food way too early because they're unsure. And this is a big question, because parents get nervous that their children might not be getting enough, that they're, you know, nursing from mother, that, you know, sometimes they're fearing iron deficiency. Like it said that the breast milk doesn't cover the iron after 6 months. However, if a mother is nursing and the baby is exploring, but not really putting foods in the mouth with the will to eat it, just to gnaw at it, like you can really tell. You're right that the vibrant colors, especially of fruits, are so appetizing that the baby will be very attracted to it. But does that necessarily mean that the baby is ready to eat? Now, some children towards the end of the first year are ready to eat. Now, I would say that if the child has some teeth and the child is really wanting to eat, you can see if the child is putting the food in his or her mouth and actively, you know, moving it around and wanting to chew it and digest it, you're going to be pretty clear on that. But if the child is putting the feet in his mouth and all kinds of things and just really exploring, the child may not really be ready for food. And so it's really a kind of like a back and forth, because like my daughter, she had teeth. My son did too, but he was, you know, towards the end of the first year, and I fed my daughter, I gave her some bite-sized pieces of fruit. And that's the other thing. If your child is really ready to eat, then you don't have to puree. Okay? And in fact, the first foods should not be pureed. You can later give pureed food, and I never recommend those pureed baby foods. I had initially thought, oh, the organic pureed foods. No, they're all oxidized. Those
Mm-hmm.
foods are sitting on a shelf. They've already been prepared.
Great
So
point.
once something is blended like that, it oxidizes, it all evaporates. There's nothing left in that. And the baby has to work, the digestive system has to work hard to push that out, to push out the toxins that are accumulated from food that's no longer food. So only starting with bite-sized pieces of fresh, ripe fruit.
Love it.
I like to start with ripe banana that's speckled. That's like pre-digested during the ripening
Mm-hmm.
process. For my daughter, she was really ready to eat earlier, but I even started her too early. Like at 6 months, at the age of your little boy,
Mm-hmm.
that's when I was already feeling I needed to feed my daughter. So she would mouth it and then she'd spit it out. She wasn't
Interesting.
really ready to eat. She was showing me clearly. But because I had read some books showing that, oh, she might not be getting enough from my milk, and she was nursing so much, but I was still concerned. So I would spoon it up off her chin after she spit it out and scoop it right back in. That's what we do. We scoop it up and
Yeah.
scoop it back, and she'd spit it out again, and I'd scoop it up and feed it back until she would swallow it. Now, meanwhile, she started to get some ear and throat infections. And looking back at it, I just don't think she was ready to eat. And I think that was her body reacting to me trying to feed her. Now, a little bit later on, she would have been ready because I think she was getting close, but I don't think she was quite ready yet. And I do believe that children can get allergies, and it's possible that my daughter may have reacted by getting sick from feeding her when her body was just not ready yet. My son, I tried to feed him towards the end of the first year. He was already having signs of some allergies even before I fed him, and there was asthma and there were ear infections. So I was really hesitant to start feeding him. But I did try about 9 months and it didn't work. It really backfired on me. He kept getting sick
Interesting.
and his asthma was getting worse. And so I waited until after he was a year old. I started feeding him again at about 13 months, 14 months. And then he was much more ready to eat. He had more teeth, and it went more smoothly at that time.
That's super helpful to hear, Karen, about that distinguishing between it just being a matter of exploration from the child. The way I'm seeing my baby boy, his mouth is his way, one of the ways he explores everything: the foot, the soil, mama's hair, everything, things that are not edible. It's his way of, I think, seeing the world. And I love how you distinguish that from they have teeth, they actually will take it, roll it around their mouth, they can actually chew it, that it's different than just exploration. I think that'll be very helpful to many people to hear. And it also brings up the question that two questions. One is, what about the mamas out there who are saying, okay, sign me up, I'm ready to breastfeed and breastfeed my baby well, because that's going to be sufficient nutrition until they are ready. That has been shown. But I don't have enough milk. What do you suggest to mamas who are trying to nurture their milk supply and feel confident that they have enough milk to nourish their babies?
Another excellent question, and a very needed question, and a question that I get frequently. And sometimes when I put out YouTube videos about breastfeeding, I get so many women contacting me, asking me questions about that. So what's most important, and it's really connected to what we're actually putting into our body,
Mm-hmm.
that's going to create the nourishment that's going to increase the breast milk supply. So if a woman is eating mostly cooked and processed foods, animal foods, which are completely depleted of fiber, the breast milk supply is going to go down.
Mm.
And I've seen women be able to increase their breast milk supply just by changing their diet and their lifestyle. A whole foods, plant-based, and very high raw food diet or totally raw food diet is going to increase the breast milk supply without a doubt, especially if based on fruits and an abundance of leafy greens and vegetables. Those are such water-rich, nutrient-dense, fiber-rich foods. And I've seen it every time that I work with somebody who has decreased breast milk supply, that it goes up when changing to this way of eating.
Incredible. So great to hear those words from your mouth as someone, again, with decades of experience. And I'll just say, as one woman, I've had no issues with the breast milk. Again, very slender I am, but and I eat just living foods, mostly fruits, and it's not been an issue. And I think it's like, as you said, it's hydrating. It's a food we're meant to eat. It's fiber rich, and fiber is so wonderful also in terms of getting out from the body any toxins that might be impeding things like breast milk supply and the hydration, right, from the fruits and vegetables. So it's great to hear you say that, though, with your experience. So that's what you found with a lot of women, and it feels so empowering to know I can provide the milk for my child just by taking care of myself. So the self-care from this diet then goes towards him. You know, it's not, they're not at war. If I take care of myself the best by eating this way, I'm taking care of my son, and that feels really good.
Oh, that's so true.
Mm.
And, you know, we can find with our own personal experiences, like what you're experiencing yourself is so powerful. When I was transitioning my two children back in 1994, and myself to raw food, my kids were 5 and 3. I was still nursing my 3-year-old who had asthma, and that was the reason why I went to a raw vegan diet.
Mm.
And when I transitioned him at 3 years old and myself, I had more milk than I had ever had. I had so much milk, I felt like I could have nursed an army. And the same thing has happened for my daughter, who also recently had a baby. Her baby is a 3-month-old girl, and my daughter has so much milk, like they don't, like she said, maybe I could donate, you know, because
Yes,
she's got so much in the refrigerator. So I think
yes.
she's, you know, actually thinking of doing that. But you know, it's just wonderful not to have to worry about those concerns, which so many women have, and they don't realize how simple it would be to live this just delightful way. And it's so simplistic. It makes life easy, just like sleeping with your child does.
Yeah.
It's all,
Yes.
it all just kind of flows, and the breast milk is just what the baby needs for all the nutrition. And there's been studies done, even in the pediatric journal and the Journal of Public Health Nursing. These articles came out in 2007 and 2009 about women who eat an abundance of fruits and vegetables during pregnancy, that the taste of those fruits and vegetables goes into the amniotic fluid. And then when during lactation, a mother eating like this way with fruits and vegetables, that it goes into the breast milk, and that child will love fruits and vegetables for the rest of his or her life.
How amazing is that? To give that, again, legacy of health in that simple way, but powerful way. One thing that you brought up for me to mention in this conversation about co-sleeping, we talked about, and Karen interviewed me on her channel. So please go check her channel out for those of you who are watching this. And we talked about co-sleeping and bed sharing, which I do also with my baby and my husband. And I found that also, because when you're sleeping with your child, they end up nursing more sometimes during the night, especially. And we know through the feedback loop, neurologically and physiologically, that part of the way to help milk flow, to help breast milk come down, is for the baby to suck. So if your baby is also sucking, that helps with just more of that breast milk. And when again I was working with Doctors Without Borders in West Africa, one of the ways we would encourage women who said, oh, my milk has dried up, is we would place a tube. It's done even here in the States, but this is old fashioned, but it works. We would sellotape a tube to the breast, and the baby would suck on the mama's nipple and on the tube. The tube would then have some sort of milk, the best milk that was available at the time, going through there, preferably somebody else's breast milk, honestly, going through that tube. The baby would get the nutrition, but the mom would also get the stimulation of her nipple. Oxytocin would happen, prolactin, all these hormones would then get triggered, and then the mama's milk could start coming in. So it's one thing just to bring up is that, again, doing all these different things that are natural, the fruits and vegetables, the sleeping with one's baby to provide more nursing, all of that, I think, supports this healthy breast milk supply.
Definitely, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly, many doctors recommend a schedule. They recommend.
Great.
I know that I was recommended to a
Yes,
schedule.
absolutely.
Why are you nursing on demand?
Yeah.
You should be every 3 hours and no less than that. And, that's not the baby's time clock. And I've seen women actually decrease their breast milk supply by trying to stick onto a strict schedule. And so what you're saying, by nursing and by that sucking stimulus, that it helps to increase the breast milk. And on-demand nursing, it's exactly what it does. And the baby is nursing for 2 reasons. One of them is milk, and the other one is bonding.
Yeah.
And so even if your baby isn't hungry and wants to be with you and nurse, it's all good, and it helps to increase the breast milk supply.
I love that you mentioned on-demand nursing. Thank you for mentioning that, because I was one of those people. I read, I'm always reading medical journals as a physician, and there was a schedule, like you said, every 3 hours usually, that was presented to me. And for women who that works for, wonderful. For me, it did not work, because what felt right intuitively was breastfeeding on demand. And I've thrown that schedule away. My baby's sleeping beautifully through the night and is well fed, and I'm getting good sleep. And just to say out to mamas out there who are not feeling that schedule, Karen just said it, and I'm saying it from my own experience, that this can be another way. And I think breastfeeding on demand for me has felt really amazing for both me and my child. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yes. Very important for people to know this.
Yeah, I think so. There's another thing also. There's a really great study around the breast milk composition. So I've had people say to me, but if you're eating just a lot of fruits and you're not eating a ton of, or you're not eating animal fats or lots and lots of fats, isn't that bad for your baby? And I'd love to hear your opinion. I just know that there's studies that actually shown that even if you're eating, for example, mostly fruits and a smaller amount of fat, your breast milk composition will give the fat percentage your baby needs for good brain development and body development. So you can be eating a lower fat diet, and the breast milk still gives the baby the nutrition, a higher fat percentage. But I think it's so incredible the way the body works. I will just share my experiences that I'm definitely eating a little bit more fats than 80-10-10 breastfeeding, but I'm not eating an overwhelming amount, right? But I'm still eating mostly fruits. And I think people would say, oh, but then your baby needs omega-3s and DHA and EPA, and that's a whole other conversation. But there's omega-3s in plants, and the conversion to the proper omega-3 for DHA and EPA can happen if you're eating a really healthy anti-inflammatory omega-3 rich diet. And so it's been my experience that again, gordito, like super well-fed, looking great brain. I mean, he is crawling at 6 months old. So he's developing beautifully. And I just want to put that out there for moms who might be worried about, am I getting the right protein, fat, macronutrient ratios on a raw vegan diet? Do you have things to share around that in your experience, Karen?
Yes. Whole foods plants are within each plant going to provide a huge range. And even something like a mango has
Yeah.
all 8 essential amino acids.
Yes.
And leafy greens are like, a perfect, just like mango is a perfect omega-3 to 6 ratio.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think that getting an abundance of fruits and vegetables is key. I do really feel that that some omega-3 fatty acids are needed, and especially during lactation, such as like some walnuts. It doesn't have to be a
Yes,
huge,
I do
but
that.
some walnuts, some
Yes.
flax seeds,
Yes.
chia, things
Yes.
that have that omega-3 ratio in a good balance, but certainly not huge amounts because we don't want to overdo the fat, but we do need some of that for
Absolutely.
proper brain development. But certainly a lot of the fruits, and like I just mentioned, the mango, and there's, the leafy greens, there's also a really good ratio of omega-3 to 6 fatty acids. And this is all important, and especially during lactation. A woman during lactation usually does have an increased appetite.
Mm-hmm. Heck
A lot
yes.
of energy demands being placed on her body through nursing. She will probably want to eat more. And that's the time where she might also want to increase a little bit more the amount of fat that she's eating. So a lot of people think it's during pregnancy,
It's
but
not. You're
more
so
during
right.
lactation.
That has been my exact experience, Karen. My exact, and it's so beautiful to be able to trust my body and to feel that increased appetite and know, again, it's to nourish me and my child and be able to trust it because I know that I'm making the right food choices. And walnuts are one of my favorite. Those are my fats of choice. Outside of fruit fats, like maybe avocado, but the omega-3 in walnuts I love. And so I love that you mentioned that.
Yes, walnuts are an excellent food for pregnancy. They're also a really good food for the brain and for
Yeah.
brain development of your baby. They even look like a brain.
Yeah, they do. I love that. I love that they do. You know what? I think I have 2 more questions I'd love to bring up during this specific conversation, and that's about social situation. So, as the saying goes, it takes a village to raise a child, and I definitely think there's just so much love that outpours, not just from parents, but from their aunties and their uncles and their grandparents and friends of parents. And people always have a lot of wonderful, supportive, they believe it's supportive, encouraging questions. And my point is when you have somebody come to you and say, isn't it time to start that baby on some solid food? Or can I give your baby, I'll have this lovely glass of milk. I want to give your baby that. Or just a piece of cake, and he's with his friends or she's with her friends and it shouldn't hurt. How do you navigate? The question is, how do you navigate talking to people about your preferences for your child? It seems almost like a silly question, but I can see how it could be so important. And the way one does it could either really make a lot of tension in relationships and even maybe the relationship with you and your child. So do you have any advice for people around that, navigating social situations and talking to people about preferences for the child?
Yeah, this is it's a really tough question.
Yeah.
And it's something that I didn't realize I was going to have to deal with over and over and over again with my kids growing up. There were times, it disrupted family holidays sometimes and occasions where relatives didn't understand and would offer my kids Coca-Cola. It's easier, of course, when your children are young, very young,
Yeah.
because you are the center of their universe and they're with you most of the time. It's more as they get older. So, your young child, you can, when your child is ready to eat, you will feed your children the food that you feel is best, you know, starting with ripe fruit. I have a whole sequence in creating healthy children.
Yes.
But certainly as they get older, it is if you are following a whole plant vegan and raw vegan lifestyle, you're definitely going to have to see how you're going to deal with those situations. There were some people who totally did not appreciate the fact that I would bring food for my kids to their homes. They became very insulted. And there were some people who did better with me telling them the doctor says. So if I would say my kids have allergies, I'm sorry, they have to eat this food. They can't eat dairy or gluten or other things because the doctor says or the allergist says, then it just kind of erased that whole people feeling intimidated or feeling insulted. And so I had to use it with some people, even though my kids at that point, when we went raw vegan, my son's allergies healed. But I really did not want to expose him again and take the risk of him getting his ear infections and asthma back. And so I would let people know if it was family, I would just tell them, like, I'll tell you a family situation that actually ended up being a good situation was that my mother-in-law, my husband is Colombian, and every time that we used to go to Colombia to visit my mother-in-law, she would feel very happy to make us these vegetarian dishes. So she would be making us fried plantains.
Yeah.
And she would be making us lentil soups. And I do have to say that my husband grew up a lot healthier than I did in Colombia, because he came from a poor family where they didn't have really very much money to add meat into their diet. So if they had a soup and they had a little tiny bit of meat, it might be a little part of that soup. Whereas, you know, I grew up on meat in my house. So I had all kinds of illnesses, where he grew up on a much healthier diet of like beans and rice, and vegetables, lots of vegetables in their house. But so my mother-in-law felt like she was giving me what was good for me. And during my pregnancy, she was feeding me the beans and vegetables and things like that. And then when I went raw vegan, it was much more difficult for her, because she didn't understand why I was eating all these salads and all this fruit, and why are you doing this? For what reason? And I told her, you know, initially the first time that we visited there, it was very difficult because she felt very insulted and was very upset about it. And it really was not good for our relationship. So what I recommend to moms and dads is that you really be honest and sincere, that you not just spring it up on somebody, that you really tell them from your heart. When we went back to visit her again, and she was already coming from a place of feeling insulted and not so friendly about food with me, I confronted her. And I told her, I said, look, I had cystic acne for 25 years. My digestion was awful. I had irritable bowel syndrome. It was probably going to get worse on the way I was eating. And now I'm eating these fruits and vegetables, which to me, I feel that they nourish me so much. And I am so grateful to you for going out of your way to make me all those beautiful bean and rice dishes and vegetables that were so much healthier than what other people are eating. But I'm at a place right now that I'm feeling even better with fruits and vegetables. And I would so much appreciate it if we can go to the store together and buy food together. And I'll even make some of the dishes. And if you want to prepare something for me, you can maybe take one of these dishes and prepare it. And it worked so much more smoothly like that. she was more understanding of my situation. We didn't have a problem around food after that. And so that's really what I recommend is telling people why you're doing it so that they can understand. And like I said, there are some people who will not.
Yeah.
And you might just have to do something like I did. Like there was one woman who did not understand why I was raising my kids on this beautiful lifestyle. And my son loved to play with her son, and they would play for hours in a tree house outside. They lived in the country, and it was such a beautiful relationship between the two boys. And I did not want to destroy that. And sometimes my son did eat a lot of junk food over there and came home and would get sick. And I would sometimes just lovingly talk to my son when he got sick and say, why do you think you're not feeling well? And he would open up to me, and he would always know kids are really, really savvy. And he would say, I know I ate the chips and I ate the M&Ms or whatever they had over there, and I'm not used to eating that stuff. And I said, you're right on, and so a lot of times if you give your kids the credit for being really knowledgeable about their health when they're growing up on this raw vegan lifestyle, or even a whole plant vegan lifestyle with lots of raw food, they're just going to be more in tune with their bodies. And so we have to give our kids the credit to be their own, their own healthy listener.
Yeah.
They're going to like really tune in with their bodies and be able to tell you. So if I had to do it over again, I might be a little bit less preachy and a little bit more understanding, and really also confront people who don't understand to help them see why, and not just do it and be angry with them.
Yeah.
And so, so I think that there's a way to do this with your kids as well, by giving them beautiful books about vegetarian. There's so many books out there now about vegetarian children. Stories like Victor the Vegetarian, which I had gotten from the Farm Sanctuary. I also took my kids to places like the Farm Sanctuary and to other animal sanctuaries, to be with the animals, to love those animals, to see that those animals deserve to live, that they have families, that the mothers just love their babies, that they cry when their babies are taken away. And so at a very early age, my kids had a lot of connection to cows and pigs and turkeys and chickens. And they fell in love with all of these animals. So that when people ask them, what's your favorite animal? They wouldn't always pick cat or dog.
Yeah. Yeah.
They would pick cow or pig.
I love that.
Or duck, or, animals, farm animals, which are often not even looked at as animals that we love and respect. They're looked at animals that we eat. And they are so cruelly murdered. And why should their lives be taken away when they also love having babies and love having a family? And the mother cow, she just loves being a mother.
Yeah. Yeah.
So these are the kinds of books that I would get for my kids, so that I didn't have to constantly be telling them my values, that my values were in these books.
So beautifully put, Karen. I love everything you shared. And I really love even the way you were sharing the story about your mother-in-law, just the softness of your voice, the way you shifted the energy as you spoke about the new way of speaking to her, coming from the heart, you said, the heart. And I do think just in my life, and I know with my raw vegan journey, whenever I came from the heart, from a place of vulnerability, a place of openness, at the end of the day, we're all human, and humans, I think, can connect from that place of being human. to bring that to the table when it's now your children, I think is such wisdom. And I want to say something again about your book, which was so helpful for me to already start reading, is you have so many, I know you said 70 years of work that book was, and you called so many great stories from many different families who shared about their ways of handling things like talking to their children about veganism and raw veganism and managing social situations. So that book is just a wealth of support. And I think I want to end with that. We could speak again for hours, and maybe we'll reconvene in any topics. And maybe those who are listening, if there's any specific topic you'd like for Karen and I to talk about in the future, please leave that in the comments down below. But Karen, thank you for the work you've done. Thank you for the being you are, and for really blessing this world with this book, and with your experience. And I would love to just maybe wrap
Thank
up
you
by
so much, Dr. Toomey.
my
I'm
pleasure.
so glad that that the book was a beautiful eye opener for you, and that you ran with the message.
Yeah, I'm dancing in the message.
Thank you.
Can you share, just to wrap up, Karen, I will leave the links below, but just where the best places for where people can connect with you and see more of your work?
Okay, well, so as I had mentioned earlier, my my websites are superhealthychildren.com, and my raw vegan coaching certification course is at feelfabulouswithfood.com. I love to be of assistance to women who want to become pregnant, to people with families. I work worldwide through Skype, through Zoom, through Facebook messaging, FaceTime, you name it, whatever people have. And I can always be reached for families at Karen, Karen, at superhealthychildren.com. I also have a newsletter, a free newsletter that I send out, and the sign up is on my website at superhealthychildren.com.
Wonderful. Karen, thank you so much for your time and all the wisdom you've shared with us today. We send you, everyone, we send you so much love. Take care.
Thank you, Dr. Toomey. I send that love right back to you. And thank you for being a medical doctor who is so proud of the raw vegan message.
I hope you enjoyed this video. I really do. And I hope you found something of benefit in it. If you did, please click like, share it with anybody else you think might benefit. Subscribe for more videos. And I send you so much love wherever in the world you might be. Take care.